Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something pretty different today. We're going to be looking at economic justice and wealth inequality. But get this, through the lens of the Baha'i Faith.
You got it. And hold on, before you click away thinking, oh no, religion, that's not what we're doing here.
Right. It's more about principles, not preaching.
Exactly. The Baha'i teachings offer some thought-provoking principles for building a more just and balanced economic system. And honestly, some of these ideas might surprise you how relevant they are today.
Okay, so let's get into it. What's at the heart of the Baha'i Faith's view of economics?
Well, one of their fundamental beliefs is this: extreme wealth and poverty. Just plain wrong, morally.
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty bold statement right there. Kind of goes against that whole survival of the fittest idea you often hear in economics.
It totally does.
But what's their alternative? What kind of system do they promote?
Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i Faith, envisioned a world where love and harmony are the foundation, where people treat each other with, well, he said, utmost love and harmony, with friendliness and fellowship.
Huh. That's powerful.
It's not just some utopia. It challenges those economic models where profit is the only goal.
So they're saying economics should be about more than just making money?
Right. Like there's a moral dimension, a responsibility to each other. And Abdu'l-Baha, who is Baha'u'llah's son, made a point about this. He said that when economics is built on spiritual principles, well, it benefits everyone, not just the wealthy few.
Yeah, here's something interesting. The Baha'i Faith isn't saying everyone should have the exact same amount of money. It's more about eliminating the extremes, like having extreme wealth and crushing poverty existing at the same time.
Absolutely.
So what's their take on wealth itself?
Good question. They don't see wealth as inherently evil. There's this quote from Abdu'l-Baha that I love. He said, "Wealth is praiseworthy in the highest degree if it is acquired by an individual's own efforts and if it be expended for philanthropic purposes."
Okay, so it's about how you get your wealth and how you use it.
That's it in a nutshell. It's not the size of your bank account, really, but the size of your heart. If you earned it honestly and use it to do good, well, that's what truly matters.
That's a great way to put it, and it leads right into another big thing, spiritual values. The Baha'i belief is to bring those values into economic decision-making. I mean, that might sound out there to some, but it feels super relevant right now.
It really does.
I can see some people saying, whoa, spirituality and economics, those are two separate worlds.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how does that work practically?
So for Baha'is, ethics and economics are intertwined. Honesty, fairness, trustworthiness, generosity.
Those aren't just like, nice qualities they have.
Nope. They see them as the foundation for a just and balanced economic system.
So it's about bringing those values, which we usually associate with personal morality, into the business world, into the market.
Precisely.
Okay, so how would that play out in business, for example?
For Baha'is, being totally honest in business is essential. No cutting corners or taking advantage of others. Integrity is everything.
So even if you could make more money by being, a little shady.
Totally off limits. They believe work, any kind of work, becomes a form of worship when you do it with a spirit of service. So you're not just working for yourself, you're working to make society better.
That's a pretty profound idea. It changes how you think about work. Makes it meaningful, even spiritual.
Right. Not just about earning a paycheck. And when it comes to wealth inequality, Baha'i teachings support the idea of wealth redistribution.
Interesting.
Now, they don't endorse any specific economic system, but their vision is a spiritualized economy.
A spiritualized economy. I like that.
Driven by compassion, justice, everyone's well-being.
So how would they put that into action?
Well, Abdu'l-Baha actually proposed something that sounds a lot like a progressive tax system. Those with more would contribute more to support social programs, help those in need.
Makes sense. So it's not that everyone has exactly the same, but those who have more give more. It's that shared responsibility.
Exactly. Everyone contributes based on what they can, making sure everyone has what they need for a dignified life, and the whole society thrives as a result.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've talked about redistribution, but what about the role of work and education in dealing with inequality?
Hugely important in the Baha'i Faith. Everyone should have access to both. Their belief is that every single person has a unique purpose and can contribute to society.
I can see that.
And education is what empowers people to reach their full potential.
That aligns with a lot of thinking today about social mobility. When people have education and meaningful work, it breaks the cycle of poverty, opens doors.
Exactly. Baha'u'llah himself said, "Every person hath been created for a purpose." And education unlocks that purpose, reduces poverty, and creates more equality by empowering individuals.
So we've covered a lot. The moral reasons for economic justice, the Baha'i view on wealth, the importance of those spiritual values in economics, and the emphasis on education and work. Anything else you need to touch on before we move on?
One more thing, and I think you'll find it fascinating. It's their approach to decision-making called consultation.
Consultation. Okay, how does that relate to economics? I'm intrigued.
So in the Baha'i Faith, consultation is about making decisions collectively. It's all about respect, including everyone, hearing all the voices.
Okay, I'm following.
Diverse perspectives are considered, and the goal is solutions that benefit everyone, especially the most vulnerable.
So imagine like a town hall meeting. Everyone, from the baker to the banker, gets a say in how resources are used. Is that what we're talking about?
You got it. And it's totally different from the usual competitive models where it's all about winning and taking it all.
It sounds almost radical.
Yeah.
But also kind of refreshing.
Right. And it goes beyond just the local level. This whole idea of cooperation extends to the global stage, too.
So they're not just talking about fixing inequality in one country, but worldwide.
You got it. Bala actually called for a world commonwealth. It's a system where the whole planet's well-being comes before any individual nation's self-interest.
Wow.
So that means collaboration in trade, sharing resources, protecting the environment, working together to build a just and sustainable world for everyone.
That's a pretty ambitious vision, to say the least. It really makes you think about what could be possible if we actually shifted our thinking in that direction.
For sure. A bold vision. And we'll get more into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so last we left off, we were talking about that whole world commonwealth thing.
Right.
It's a pretty radical concept. The nations actually working together, for the good of the whole planet. How would that even work?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenging idea. But it's like the core of the Baha'i vision for a just and peaceful world. They believe that just as we need systems for cooperation and sharing within nations, we need them globally, too.
Okay, I could see that. So instead of countries constantly competing, hoarding resources, putting themselves first, they're advocating for a more collaborative approach.
Exactly. They believe that those big global challenges like poverty, climate change, and conflict, we can only really tackle them through international cooperation. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected, working together for the benefit of humanity as a whole.
That's a huge shift from how things usually work on the world stage. I mean, do the Baha'i teachings give any practical examples, like what this world commonwealth would look like in action?
Well, they don't have a specific blueprint, but they do provide guiding principles.
Okay.
For example, they call for a global system of governance that can make decisions about issues that affect the entire planet. And they advocate for a fairer distribution of resources and mechanisms to address global poverty and inequality.
So instead of every country just fending for itself, we're talking about a system where wealthier nations share the resources with those in need, and everyone works together to make sure everyone's basic needs are met. It sounds, well, kind of utopian, doesn't it?
It might sound that way, but the Baha'i teachings are rooted in a belief in the inherent nobility and capacity of humanity. They believe we have the potential to create a just and peaceful world, but it requires a fundamental shift in our consciousness, moving away from self-interest toward a recognition of our shared humanity.
So it's not just about changing the systems, but also changing our hearts and minds.
You got it. It's a transformation that needs to happen at all levels, from individuals to governments to those international institutions. They believe that real change starts with individual transformation, but it also needs to be reflected in our social structures and institutions.
Makes sense. But let's be real for a second. We live in a world where greed and self-interest often seem to be the driving forces behind a lot of economic decisions. How can we even hope to create such a fundamentally different system?
That's a fair question, and the Baha'i teachings do acknowledge the challenges, but they also remind us that throughout history, humanity has overcome obstacles that seemed impossible to create a better world. Like, think about the abolition of slavery, the advancement of women's rights, the dismantling of apartheid. These were all considered radical ideas at their time, but they became reality because people with vision and courage challenged the status quo and worked for a better future.
So it's about believing in the possibility of change and working toward it, even if it seems like an uphill battle.
Exactly. The Baha'i teachings emphasize both individual action and collective effort. Everyone has a role to play in creating a more just and peaceful world.
That's empowering, right?
Yeah.
It means that even those small acts of kindness, generosity, and service can contribute to a larger movement for change.
Absolutely. They believe that every act of service, no matter how small, has the potential to create a ripple effect.
Okay, so let's get a little more specific about how this works on the ground level. How are Baha'i communities around the world actually putting these principles into practice? I mean, we touched on this a bit earlier, but I'd like to know more.
Well, one of the hallmarks of the Baha'i community is their dedication to social action. They're involved in a wide range of initiatives to empower individuals and communities to address their own needs.
So what kinds of initiatives are we talking about here? Can you give us some concrete examples?
Oh, you'll find everything from literacy programs, helping people learn to read and write, to vocational training programs that give people job skills, to microfinance initiatives that provide small loans to help people start businesses. They also really focus on promoting education, especially for girls and women.
So it's about equipping people with the tools and resources they need to become self-sufficient and contribute to their communities.
Exactly. Empowerment is key to breaking that cycle of poverty and creating a more just and equitable society. And a lot of these initiatives are guided by the principle of consultation, making sure they're truly responding to the needs of the community and that everyone's voice is heard.
That makes sense. Working with communities, not imposing solutions from the outside.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the inherent wisdom and capacity of every individual and community and creating systems that allow everyone to participate and contribute to the well-being of society.
Okay, so we've covered some pretty big ideas in this deep dive. The moral imperative for economic justice, the Baha'i perspective on wealth and its redistribution, the role of spiritual values in economics, the importance of education and work, that concept of consultation, and the vision of a world commonwealth. It's a lot to take in, but I'm finding it all really thought-provoking.
It is a lot. It's important to remember that these ideas aren't just theoretical. They're meant to be lived, put into action in our everyday lives and in how we structure our societies.
Yeah, you're right. It's not enough to just talk about these principles. We need to find ways to actually put them into practice. But where do we even begin? I mean, it can feel overwhelming to think about tackling such massive issues like poverty, inequality, and injustice.
It can be overwhelming, but the Baha'i teachings remind us that even small acts can make a difference. They encourage us to focus on what we can do right now to create a more just and compassionate world.
So what are some practical things that individuals can do to move us in that direction?
Well, one of the most important things is to start with ourselves. Ask ourselves how we can live more in alignment with the spiritual values we want to see in our economic systems.
Okay.
Honesty, generosity, compassion, a sense of justice. These are all qualities we can cultivate in ourselves and express in how we interact with others.
So it's about living those values every day, not just talking about them.
Right, and that can look like a lot of different things. It could be as simple as being kind and respectful to everyone we encounter, no matter their economic status. Or maybe making a conscious effort to support businesses that are operating ethically and sustainably.
It's about aligning our actions with our values.
Exactly. And it's also about using our voices and our resources to advocate for a more just and equitable economic system. We can support organizations fighting poverty and inequality. We can educate ourselves and others about these issues. And we can contact our elected officials to let them know that we care about these issues and want to see change.
So it's about taking action on both the individual and collective levels, living our values, making conscious choices, and working together to create a better world.
And it's important to remember, this is a journey, not a destination. There's no magic formula or quick fix for these challenges. But by starting with ourselves, taking small steps, and working together, we can begin to create a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive and reach their full potential.
You know, it really strikes me that this whole Baha'i perspective, it's not just about changing economic systems, right? It's like a much deeper change.
Yeah, it is.
A shift in how we think, recognizing our interconnectedness, committing to actually living our values.
You got it. For Baha'is economic justice, it's not just about tweaking policies here and there. It's about aligning our material lives with our spiritual goals, creating a world that reflects those values. Unity, justice, compassion.
It's like they're weaving together the spiritual and the practical in a way you don't often see.
Exactly. It's not just about lofty ideals. It's about putting those ideals into action, both in our personal lives and in those systems we create.
Okay, so let's bring this home for our listeners. Someone's inspired by what we've been talking about, right? Where do they go from here? What can they actually do to, put these Baha'i principles into practice in their own lives?
That's the question, isn't it? There are so many ways to start. One simple but powerful step is to just think about your own spending habits.
Oh,
Are you supporting businesses that align with your values?
so like if someone believes in fair trade, for example, they could choose to buy coffee from a company that's, ethical, treats its workers well.
Exactly. You vote with your dollar, right? Even small choices like that can make a difference, contribute to a more just economy.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about beyond just what we buy? What other things can we do in our daily lives?
Think about what you're good at, your talents and skills.
Yeah.
What can you offer to your community? Maybe you're a great tutor. You could volunteer to help kids who are struggling with reading. Or maybe you're a fantastic organizer and could help a local food bank run more smoothly.
So use our skills to make a positive impact.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be these big, grand gestures. Small acts of service done with love and generosity, they can create those ripple effects, those positive changes.
I love that. That's something anyone can relate to, regardless of what they believe, right? We all have something to offer.
Absolutely. The Baha'i teachings really stress that. Every act of service, no matter how small it seems, contributes to a better world.
Well, this has been incredibly eye-opening, this whole deep dive into the Baha'i perspective on economic justice. We've talked about some challenging concepts, inspiring principles, and practical ways we can each make a difference.
It has been a really fascinating conversation, and hopefully it's given you some new ideas and maybe inspired you to think differently about wealth, poverty, and, the purpose of our economic systems.
And if you're interested in learning more, we encourage you to do some exploring. There's a ton of information out there about the Baha'i Faith and what they teach about social and economic justice.
Yeah, and remember, building a more just and equitable world, it takes all of us. It starts with each of us. So what small step will you take today to make a difference?
That's a great question to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep working to make the world a better place.